The battle raged across the stars, with the forces of humanity and the alien invaders locked in a conflict that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The first wave of the war had been brutal, leaving entire worlds scorched and countless lives lost. But the invaders, the Zakaran, had underestimated humanity's will to fight. In the aftermath of the catastrophic first strike, Earth's united military forces began to regroup. But they didn't just sit back and wait. No, humans were never ones to bend the knee. If anything, the invasion had forged them into a stronger, more resolute force. General Arya Trent stood on the bridge of the Dawnfire, a massive battleship that had been retrofitted with humanity's most advanced technology. Her dark hair, streaked with silver, framed a face hardened by countless battles. Despite the weariness in her eyes, there was fire in her spirit. They had lost much, but they had also gained something priceless: unity. Report, Lieutenant, Arya called out to the officers at the navigation console. Ma'am, Lieutenant Marcus Voss replied. We've picked up an anomaly near the edge of the sector. It looks like a Zakaran supply ship, but it's heavily damaged. Could be a trap. Arya's lips curled into a determined smile. Then we'll make it a trap of our own. In the months since the war had begun, humanity had learned to adapt quickly. The Zakaran relied on their superior technology and overwhelming numbers, but they had failed to anticipate human ingenuity. The first few skirmishes had been costly, but humans weren't afraid to take risks. They made use of unconventional tactics, adapted alien technology, and most importantly, they learned from their mistakes. The Zakaran, in their arrogance, had failed to account for the unpredictability of human resolve. They thought that by destroying Earth's cities, they could break the spirit of humanity. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant. Prepare for combat, Arya ordered, her voice calm but commanding. If we can take out this supply ship, it'll give us the edge. We need to disrupt our forces in the sector. As the Dawnfire approached the damaged Zakaran vessel, Arya's mind raced. It had been a long time since humanity had felt like they were on offensive, but this was their moment. The Zakaran might have been technologically advanced, but they lacked the one thing that made humanity so dangerous: the will to win. The Dawnfire engaged its cloaking systems and drifted toward the Zakaran ship, its sleek form blending into the backdrop of space. But as they neared the enemy vessel, something unexpected happened. Ma'am, something's off, Marcus called out, his voice laced with confusion. The Zakaran ship's radiation signatures are fluctuating. It's not what we expected. Before Arya could respond, the Zakaran ship suddenly erupted in a brilliant flare of light, the result of a catastrophic explosion that sent shockwaves through the surrounding space. The Dawnfire barely managed to evade the blast, and in the aftermath, the wreckage of the Zakaran vessel was little more than a drifting mass of metal and debris. Ambush, Arya muttered, narrowing her eyes. The Zakaran were baiting us. They knew we'd come. But as the debris began to settle, a new signal came through on their scanners. It was faint, but unmistakable: human signatures. Is it possible? Marcus asked, incredulous. Set a course, Arya commanded without hesitation. If there's any chance of survivors, we're going to find them. The Dawnfire moved toward the source of the signal, and what they found was nothing short of extraordinary. A small group of human soldiers, stranded on a derelict Zakaran ship, had managed to survive the blast. They had been captured, interrogated, and tortured for weeks, but they had never given up the fight. General Trent, one of the soldiers, a young woman with fiery red hair and battle scars across her face, saluted weakly as the Dawnfire crew pulled her and her comrades aboard. We thought we were done for, ma'am, but we didn't surrender. Not ever. Arya's eyes softened for a moment. That's the spirit that will win this war. Humanity doesn't give up, ever. With the survivors safe aboard the Dawnfire, Arya turned her attention back to the mission. They had gained a victory today, but this was only the beginning. The Zakaran were relentless, and they would strike again, but humanity had proven something crucial. It wasn't their weapons that made them strong, it was their spirit. As the Dawnfire set course for the next battle, General Arya Trent knew one thing for certain: humanity would rise, and it would not be stopped. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info. The Dawnfire glided through the void, its hull scarred by battles fought and won. its crew hardened by the brutal realities of war. General Arya Trent stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars, which now seemed more like distant beacons of hope rather than mere points of light. Humanity had proven itself resilient, and each victory, no matter how small, fueled their resolve. But the Zakaran, despite their earlier mistakes, were adapting. They were learning, just as humanity had. The war was no longer just about sheer numbers or firepower. It was about strategy, deception, and the survival of cultures on the brink of extinction. Ma'am, Lieutenant Voss' voice interrupted her thoughts. We've received a transmission from the Alliance Council. They're calling for a summit. Arya turned away from the view, a furrow creasing her brow. A summit, in the middle of a war. Voss hesitated. They believe it's time to negotiate, to find a diplomatic solution. Arya's heart sank. She had heard whispers of such discussions, voices of dissent from those who thought that humanity had already lost too much. There were whispers of surrender, of compromising with the Zakaran, of finding a way to coexist. But Arya knew the truth. Once the Zakaran had tasted human blood, there would be no peace. We don't negotiate with monsters, she muttered, more to herself than to Voss. We stop them, or we die trying. A cold silence filled the bridge. Voss didn't argue. He knew his commander too well. She was as relentless as the war itself, and her faith in humanity's capacity for survival was unmatched. Tell the council we'll be there, Arya finally said, her voice steady. But I want one thing made clear. We'll only be part of the summit if the Zakaran are forced to the table on our terms. The transmission crackled, and moments later, the face of Councillor Amina Halvorsen appeared on the main screen. Her expression was solemn, but there was an undeniable edge of urgency to her words. General Trent, I understand your reservations, Amina said, her voice measured but heavy with the weight of diplomacy. But if we don't act now, the Zakaran will overrun our last defenses. We need to buy time, even if it's through talks. Arya didn't need to hear more. She had seen the destruction in the wake of the Zakaran war machines, the devastated colonies, the burning planets. Time wasn't something they had much of, but she wasn't going to sit idly by while politicians talked. Humanity's fate wasn't up for negotiation. I'll be there, Councillor, Arya said coldly, her mind already racing through the many ways the summit could go wrong. But I promise you this, if the Zakaran don't agree to a ceasefire on our terms, we'll continue this war until they regret ever setting foot in our galaxy. Amina's lips tightened, but she nodded. Understood, General. We'll prepare the arrangements. The transmission ended, and the crew returned to their duties, but Arya didn't feel relief. She felt a gnawing sense of foreboding. The Zakaran were ruthless. If they didn't come to the summit with the intention of surrendering, it would be just another trap, and humanity would be caught in it. Days later, the Dawnfire arrived at the neutral zone, a distant star system far from the front lines. An old, abandoned space station, now repurposed for diplomatic talks, loomed in the distance. The Zakaran delegation was already present, their ship a towering, menacing structure that dwarfs the human fleet. The negotiation chamber aboard the station was a cold, metallic room with sleek, reflective surfaces designed more for intimidation than comfort. The alien ambassadors, tall and sinewy, stood like statues, their gaze unwavering as Arya and her team entered. Councillor Halvorsen, seated at the table, greeted Arya with a stiff nod. We've taken all precautions. No weapons on the table. This is about diplomacy. Arya's eyes flicked to the Zakaran, who stood impassively. They were waiting for the first move, knowing full well that humans didn't trust easily. Arya's soldiers, meanwhile, were on high alert, their fingers twitching near weapons just out of sight. I'm not here to negotiate peace, Arya said bluntly, cutting through the formalities. I'm here to deliver a message. We will fight until every last one of you is driven from our galaxy, or until we are dead. You'll be given one chance to leave or face extinction. Take it or leave it. The Zakaran ambassador, a tall figure with smooth, obsidian skin and glowing eyes, tilted his head slightly. Humanity's resistance has been surprising, but your defiance will be crushed. General, this galaxy is ours. Arya leaned forward, her voice calm but laced with steel. The galaxy doesn't belong to you. It belongs to those who fight for it. We don't bow to tyrants, and we don't negotiate with monsters. The alien ambassador's eyes narrowed, a faint hiss escaping from his throat. You are foolish, General Trent. Your race is nothing but insects before us. At that, Arya smiled, a slow, calculating smile that sent a chill through the Zakaran. If you want to know what an insect can do, she said softly, watch closely, we're just getting started. With that, she turned and motioned for her team to leave. The summit was over before it had even truly begun. The Zakaran had come to the table expecting surrender. Instead, they had faced a humanity that would not kneel. And now, the war would continue, but it wasn't just humanity's survival at stake anymore. It was their vengeance, their justice, and their unyielding will to rise against oppression. The Zakaran had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity. And now, they would learn what it truly meant to face the fury of a species that would never give up. The Dawnfire tore through the darkness of space, its engines roaring with the intensity of a machine that had been given a singular purpose to fight. General Arya Trent stood in the command center, her mind focused on the next move. The summit had been a disaster, as she'd expected. The Zakaran hadn't come to negotiate peace, they'd come to mock humanity's resolve. But now, humanity had a new target tone that would send a clear message across the stars. Target confirmed, Ma'am. Lieutenant Voss's voice rang out from the navigation console. Zakaran dreadnought scorned Eclipsites located in the Vashar system, heavily fortified. Their fleet is docked, and they've just deployed reinforcements. Arya's eyes hardened. The scorned Eclipse was the Zakaran's flagship, a behemoth of destruction capable of decimating entire fleets with a single strike. It had been responsible for the annihilation of countless colonies, leaving only ashes in its wake. But now, humanity had a chance for retribution, a chance to strike at the heart of their enemy's power. Set course for the Vashar system, Arya ordered, her voice unwavering. We're not here to negotiate anymore, we're here to make them bleed. The crew of the Dawnfire had been through hell. Each member had seen horrors unimaginable in the heat of battle, yet they stood together, united by a singular cause: revenge. The loss of Earth's great cities, the fall of their allies, the endless waves of destruction, everything had led them here. We're going in hot, General, Voss said, his tone serious. The Zakaran will be expecting us. They'll have a full defensive grid in place. Arya looked at the tactical screen, which displayed the enemy's fleet in orbit around the Zakaran homeworld. It was a fortress impenetrable, vast, and designed to crush any resistance. But humanity had learned how to fight smarter, not harder. The Dawnfire had been equipped with the latest in stealth technology, and it was time to put it to use. Deploy the EMP drones, Arya commanded. We'll blind their defenses long enough to get in range, then we hit them hard and fast. The Dawnfire slipped into the edge of the Vashar system, invisible to the enemy's sensors. As they approached the Zakaran dreadnought, Arya felt the weight of what was to come. This wasn't just another battle. This was humanity's response to the invasion. This was the moment they would show the Zakaran that their war was far from over. EMP drones launched. Voss called out, we've got a 90-second window before their systems come back online. Then let's make it count, Arya replied. All hands, brace for impact. The Dawnfire surged forward, its weapons systems powering up. The first volley of fire from the Zakaran dreadnought barely had time to register before the EMP drones exploded, sending a shockwave through the Zakaran's defensive grid. For a brief, glorious moment, their weapons were offline, their shields flickering like dying embers. Arya's eyes gleamed. Nah. The Dawnfire unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy blasts, ripping through the disabled Zakaran ships with brutal efficiency. The enemy fleet scattered in chaos, unable to respond fast enough. The Zakaran flagship, scorned Eclipse, took the brunt of the assault, its hull shuddering as the missiles made contact. Direct hit, shields at 40%, Voss shouted, his voice tense but triumphant. Keep the pressure on them, Arya barked, gripping the armrests of her chair. We've only got one chance at this. The Zakaran flagship returned fire, its weapons now back online. But it was too late. The Dawnfire was already maneuvering, a blur of agility and precision as it danced around the enemy's counterattacks. The crew had trained for this. The Zakaran had underestimated humanity's ability to fight as a united force, and now they would pay the price. Direct hit to the main reactor, Voss said, his voice filled with a hint of disbelief. The scorned Eclipse is destabilizing. It's going critical. Arya allowed herself a rare smile. The Zakaran might have thought they could crush humanity, but now they were about to see the price of underestimating them. Prepare to withdraw, Arya ordered. We've done what we came to do. The Dawnfire pulled away, its engine screaming as it moved back into the safety of the system's debris field. Just as the scorned eclipse erupted in a violent explosion, its massive form disintegrating in a flash of light. Humanity had just delivered its first real blow to the Zakaran war machine. Back aboard the Dawnfire, Arya stood before her crew, her heart pounding from the adrenaline of the fight. They had achieved the impossible, destroying the most powerful ship in the Zakaran fleet, but she knew this was just the beginning. The war was far from over, and the Zakaran wouldn't back down from this loss easily. Today, we sent a message, Arya said, her voice steady as she addressed her crew. We showed the galaxy that humanity fights with everything it has, no matter the odds. But don't get complacent, the Zakaran will come for us again. We'll need to be ready. As the crew of the Dawnfire celebrated their victory, Arya's mind was already on the next battle. The fight for humanity's survival was far from over, and the road ahead would be even harder. But with every victory, they proved one undeniable truth: humanity would never surrender. They would rise, fight, and win no matter the cost. And the Zakaran would learn that the real strength of humanity wasn't in its technology or tactics. It was in its will to never give up. The victory over the scorned eclipse was a turning point in the war, but it was also a harbinger of the storm to come. The Zakaran had suffered a massive defeat, and they were no strangers to vengeance. The shockwave of that explosion reverberated throughout their entire fleet, and now, every warship, every soldier, every fleet commander knew that humanity was not to be underestimated. The question on General Arya Trent's mind, as the Dawnfire drifted toward the edge of the solar system, was simple: can we finish this? For the first time in years, Arya had a sense of uncertainty. The Zakaran had mobilized in full force, their most formidable fleet converging on the last human-held strongholds. Humanity had made it this far, but the path ahead would require everything they had. We've been through worse, Arya said, her voice unwavering as she stood in the strategy room, surrounded by her senior officers. Now we face the final battle. Lieutenant Voss stepped forward. We've got intel on the Zakaran's next move. They're planning to strike the Callias station in 48 hours. It's our last major supply hub and communication node for the entire human resistance. Then we don't let them take it, Arya said, her expression cold and determined. Prepare the fleet. We're going to make this a stand they'll never forget. The Callias station was a colossal structure, floating at the outer edge of the solar system. It was an engineering marvel, humanity's last bastion of advanced research and technological development. It was the heart of all human resistance, and it was about to be the target of a final, crushing assault by the Zakaran. The Zakaran had learned from their previous mistakes. They had gathered their forces into an armada unlike anything humanity had seen before, a fleet of hundreds of warships, including the terrifying Empress Wrath, the largest and most formidable dreadnought ever constructed by the alien race. If they succeeded in taking Callias, the human resistance would collapse. But General Arya Trent wasn't about to let that happen. General, Voss' voice crackled over the comms as the Dawnfire sped toward the battlefront. We've detected the Emperor's Wrath. It's on a direct course for Callias, accompanied by the bulk of their fleet. Let them come, Arya replied, her jaw set. This is where we end it. Every fleet under our command is to engage on my signal. We will fight for every inch of Callias if we have to. The battlefield was chaos incarnate. The Zakaran fleet descended like a swarm of predators, their weapons blazing in a relentless barrage. The Dawnfire darted in and out of enemy fire, its engines screaming as it maneuvered with lethal precision. Arya's pulse raced, her focus narrowing to the tasks at hand. This was the moment she had been preparing for her entire life. The fate of humanity rested on their ability to hold the line. All ships, lock onto the Emperor's Wrath, Arya shouted. We need to hit them where it hurts. Take out their command and communications. The Zakaran flagship was a towering beast, its weapon systems powered by a mysterious energy source that could decimate entire fleets. But Arya had something they didn't: ingenuity. The Dawnfire had been retrofitted with an experimental quantum disruptor, a weapon that could disrupt the Zakaran's advanced energy shields. targeting the Emperor's wrath now, Voss confirmed. The human fleet engaged in a full-scale battle. Ships lit up the sky with the fury of countless missiles, laser blasts, and energy cannons. The Zakaran retaliated with overwhelming force, but humanity's fleet, though smaller, fought with unparalleled tenacity. They moved with a single purpose: to defend their last stronghold and ensure that they would not be erased. Arya stood at the command center, watching the battle unfold on the tactical map. Callias Station was barely holding, its shields flickering with each wave of attack. The Zakaran were pushing hard, but the human fleet wasn't giving up. Every ship, every crew member, was fighting with the same unspoken vow: we will not fall. The Dawnfire broke through the chaos, heading straight for the Emperor's wrath. It was a daring move, but Arya knew there was no other choice. If they didn't take down the flagship, the human fleet wouldn't survive. Prepare to fire the quantum disruptor, Arya ordered. Voss, target their command center. Voss hesitated for a split second, then nodded. Aye, General. Target locked. The Dawnfire's main guns powered up, a shimmering energy field gathering around the disruptor cannon. The Zakaran flagship loomed ahead, and for the briefest of moments, Arya felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. The battle was theirs to win. Fire, she commanded. The quantum disruptor shot out, a beam of concentrated energy that collided with the Emperor's wrath, piercing its shields and breaching its hull. The massive ship shuddered as its command center exploded, sending shockwaves through the Zakaran fleet. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The Zakaran flagship was crippled, its command systems offline. Chaos erupted among their forces as the flagship faltered, and the human fleet moved in for the kill. We've done it, Voss breathed in disbelief. Arya's heart hammered in her chest. The Zakaran fleet was scattering, their leadership destroyed, but she knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The Emperor's wrath might be down, but there were still thousands of Zakaran ships in orbit. We finish this now, Arya said, voice low but filled with fire. Every ship, every soldier push forward. This is humanity's final stand, and we will make it count. Hours later, the battle for Callias Station was won. The Zakaran had been repelled, their fleet in disarray, with the remains of their once mighty flagship drifting in the wreckage. Humanity had survived the final assault, but the cost had been immense. As Arya looked out at the wreckage of the Zakaran armada from the observation deck of the Dawnfire, she knew that this wasn't just a victory, it was a message. The Zakaran had learned too late what humanity was capable of. They had underestimated the strength of a species that would fight to the bitter end, and now, they would never forget. Humanity had risen from the ashes of war, not as a species broken by conflict, but as one that had forged itself stronger than ever before. Their struggle had been long, but in the end, it had made them unstoppable.